when doctors made a link between smoking and lung cancer. And obviously this meant that the tobacco industry was seriously under threat. Their product was potentially harmful to human beings, or almost definitely harmful to human beings. And so how did they respond? Well, they hired the brightest PR companies in the land to essentially sow doubt around the science and suggest that perhaps actually some cigarettes were better than others, suggest that there were certain things in certain cigarettes that were the problem, and to suggest actually that some cigarettes were absolutely fine. So, and this tactic actually worked extremely well. To this, now when we pick up a packet of cigarettes, we've got health warnings on them, but that we're talking 70 years later. And so when big oil kind of worked out that climate change and their fossil fuel consumption and use and extraction were interlinked, they knew exactly what to do. So instead, perhaps, of doing what we would hope that what people are starting to do now and look at their business model, the oil companies actually started to hire great PR people to sow doubt around the science, to suggest that actually maybe we had longer than we think we do to deal with climate change. And actually that maybe fossil fuels aren't so bad after all. And that has led to a pretty healthy greenwash industry and a pretty fantastic revenue stream for various unscrupulous advertising organizations. But I think the thing that we can take from this is that greenwashing, we all know what it looks like. It's reasonably predictable, and we can do something about it. And then came social media and conspiracy theories and individuals and state actors who had a really vested interest in making sure that people and kind of continue to be confused about certain issues. And the rise of conspiracy theories was set. So did you know that 12 million Americans believe that lizard people have actually taken over the government? And a staggering over half of the American population and a quarter of the UK population and rising have doubts over taking the COVID vaccine that will come in, that will hopefully come in over the course of early next year, because they are, and part of that is linked to the kind of rise of conspiracy theories that perhaps Bill Gates is using that vaccine to place chips in our brain, or that vaccine will have side effects. I believe there's one going around in Russia at the moment that suggests that the American vaccine will turn people into monkeys. So you can see that actually disinformation, when it comes from an oil company, when it comes from a tobacco company, we can see what it looks like, we can understand the motivations, and it's got history. But when we start to get into the realms of conspiracy theories, and at a time when people don't trust the government and institutions in the way that they used to, we enter quite a different information environment. And why are we concerned about this? Well, these are some headlines from 2 years ago, and concerning the UN Global Compact on Migration, which was supposed to be ratified in December 2018. And what happened was this multilateral agreement came under a sustained disinformation attack from various different sources, including the wonderful rebel media and Breitbart, and which claimed that it would make that if any country that signed this, it would be illegal in that country to criticize migration, and that was just not true. And what happened was many countries pulled out: Brazil, Chile, the US, Latvia, Poland. The Belgian government actually collapsed over kind of civil unrest and parliamentary unrest based on them wanting to ratify this treaty. So we can see that this misinformation can have really, really serious consequences when you consider big multilateral agreements like this. And what you should know also is that this kind of raft of misinformation, disinformation that we're seeing is basically funded by advertising. So it has a whole business model, as does hate speech, where kind of basically kind of anyone can put up a website, anyone can or create a YouTube channel and monetize that. And this stream of disinformation, where, I mean, this is an example of Cozier, the search engine linked to tree planting, advertising on serious climate denial, what they haven't told you about climate change. And we're really worried about this stuff because what's coming up next year? Well, COP26. Now, COP26 is the world's biggest conference around climate change. It's attended by decision makers in all the global nations. And the idea is that it's about setting a roadmap and agreements around how we get to 1.5 degrees warming, which is what we need to, for life on Earth not to be seriously affected by this. And we're seriously worried, or certainly we've picked up signals that there's a lot of people who are sharpening their knives and looking at COP26 and just thinking about how they might be able to derail this multilateral agreement through misinformation. So we're just going to pause there, and we're going to kind of do a little kind of climate misinformation 101, because first off, I wouldn't want you to think that climate misinformation is just anything that doesn't agree with me. We do have definitions around what that actually looks like. And climate disinformation can take many forms. We have the straight up global warming is a hoax. It's not actually happening. It's made up by a cabal of scientists. It's made up by a cabal of people that want to keep us locked in our homes, all of that stuff. But then you've got much more subtle messaging as well. And actually the nature of climate denial has changed hugely. Now you have much more kind of stuff that's what we call climate delay messaging, meaning instead it's all right, climate change is happening, but we don't have to act on it now. Things like technology will save us or whatever. And that's been a significant shift in the way that this messaging is kind of found online. So within this report, we identified 4 major strategies that we've called our dirty strategies online. And they all come from different places and they all have different aims. So the first is what I talked about at the beginning of this presentation, is the Big Tobacco Playbook. And that's basically a kind of PR-led strategy that aims to sow doubt in science. Quite simple. It usually comes from high carbon organizations like makers of SUVs or oil companies. Our second strategy is a culture wars strategy. This one's mainly comes from political actors. You'll recognize this instantly from all the political campaigning that's been happening. And the idea is that you create division. You pit groups of people against each other. The third one is conspiracy theories, and this is all about eroding trust in institutions. Cabals of scientists are making these decisions. There's an inside job happening here, and they're all about creating distrust. And finally, you've got trolling, which is often individuals or coordinated groups of individuals out there on the internet making life difficult and kind of derailing arguments. So what do they look like? The Big Tobacco Playbook, I mean, like I talked about the climate denial, the climate delay messaging. Big Tobacco Playbook is all about doubt. And at the moment, the area of doubt is like, actually, should we be acting now? Why is climate change the thing that, aren't we just being alarmist about climate change? And some of the narratives you'll see here are things like, don't worry, technology will save us. All we need is more wind turbines, carbon capture and storage, whatever that is. And we know, we've looked at the data, we know that technology isn't going to save us. It's going to have to come along with behaviour change. You also see things like, we shouldn't have to act until China acts, or, oh, it's too late anyway, so we should just get on and party. Our second dirty strategy is the culture wars. So this is an English example, but you can see that you've got kind of this them and us dynamic within these culture wars. So the idea is, the first one is stop climate alarmism in the classroom. You know, these climate activists are terrifying our children, and this is really wrong. Or, you know, another great one here is like the eco-celebrity hypocrites. So Meghan and Harry jump in a jumbo jet every time, jump in their private jet every time they want to go somewhere. Oh, Sting and Trudy Styler are champagne environmentalists. And it's the idea here is to kind of that usually it's an elites against an underdog group here.
And just one thing on our previous culture wars division is that you will see later on, but these type of anti-organizations like EcoCentral, they take on names that bring up a very vague meaning. So EcoCentral could actually mean anything. And in this case, they are not a pro-climate organization, they're an anti-climate organization. So it's also one of those situations in which the other side are adopting the strategies that are based on just vague words that can mean anything, and they're just weaponizing them for their own agenda.
So we've talked a little bit about conspiracy theories, but this is just an example of an anti-science conspiracy theory based around the coronavirus. You'll see, you know, lots of others. But this is I mean, conspiracy theories in their purest form are offering some form of conspiracy by a group of people as an explanation for something which has a much more straightforward or sometimes more complex explanation. So here it's this idea that coronavirus, you know, kind of action around coronavirus is actually you know, kind of a conspiracy kind of cooked up by Big Pharma and the Gates Foundation to inject everybody with mandatory vaccines, which will implant chips in their brains. It sounds ridiculous, but people really passionately believe these things. And they set really unhelpful frames for the climate movement because they erode trust in science, they erode in scientists, they erode trust in the institutions that we would normally look to try and kind of break us out of some of these or solve some of these issues.
And at the same time, there are different levels of conspiracy theories. So there are theories that are more rooted into the real world, and there are so many others that are, you know, just plain at a very, they're just delusional. So there are different levels of conspiracy theories that some people buy into because they are more close to what we can see day to day, and there are some others that are so far removed that are just even more hurtful, like you know, the lizard people basically. But there are you know, there is a wide range of conspiracy theories. There isn't just everyone who believes in them is you know, has some kind of trust issue. You can be very well respected in your career or your profession, and also buy into specific conspiracy theories that talk to a specific topic that you care about. So there's a lot of nuance in regards to this one.
And then this is just an example of trolling. So this was a coordinated campaign. It's basically suggesting that Extinction Rebellion and kind of would put out messaging that suggests that human beings are the virus and that coronavirus was the cure. Now this kind of trolling works really, really well because it works with an innate belief about the group of people you're talking about. So there are people within the environmental movement who, you know, kind of can be seen as, or do place nature in a much higher regard than human beings. And so this kind of trolling and the ridicule that can kind of come with it are all based around that something, kind of an innate assumption about a group of people to be really powerful. And this was hugely disruptive for Extinction Rebellion when it came out earlier on this year. They had to they had to track down this handle and to find and try and track down who had been making this. And because they had they have such a hackable brand, and they encourage people to use that brand to communicate and adapt it in their own ways, it was really easy for the trolls to get them. So that's just an example of 4 of these predictable strategies that we can see online. And I think it's really important to know that, yes, there are crossover, there's tactics that can be used by each one of them, that will be the same, but they do come from different places, and you do have to respond to them in different ways. So you wouldn't respond to kind of a group of conspiracy theorists in the same way that you might respond to a group that are using the Big Tobacco Playbook. And that's essentially the kind of the heart of this toolkit, is like, how do you predict and how do you respond? So we've just picked out, there's a lot of kind of commandments and things that we think you should do in the toolkit itself. But we've just tried to pick out some highlights that we think are particularly interesting for Mozilla. So yeah, I mean, at the heart of this report is like, if you don't like what is being said, change the conversation. So how do you do that in an online and digital environment? So we picked up kind of 3 roles for organizations online. The first of which is setting the record straight. So that is quite an adversarial strategy, and that is about finding a mistruth that has been told and setting it right, or it's about showing solidarity with a group of people. So, for example, here in the UK, when there was a kind of racist incident where Black Lives Matter was kind of some Black Lives Matter content on the television was trolled and complained about heavily. And so a television channel actually created some adverts that stood in solidarity with the Black community and said, no, everyone deserves to be heard. So that's the first one, setting the record straight. The next one is about campaigning. And this is what we're used to. This is about highlighting something that's wrong or something that needs to change and galvanizing public support behind that change. And then the third one is about growing brands. So we need trusted brands in this space. We need organizations to be offering us solutions that will help kind of reduce our emissions and take action on climate change. And if we have each of these roles being fulfilled by organizations who maybe typically just talk about their brand, or maybe typically just think about kind of campaigning in a traditional sense, then we will be able to change that online conversation. So the first key finding from this report is that we need to embrace diversity. When we did interviews to put this together, and what we found was that we need to have more pluralistic narratives around climate change and climate kind of change mitigation. So in the UK, we found consistent examples of really kind of middle-class centric, if you've got enough money, you make these choices, narratives, and kind of quite technocentric, kind of white savior narratives, essentially. And actually, there is a huge number of entry points and a huge number of communities who are talking about climate change and who are thinking about it. So, for example, the Muslim community have released an Islamic declaration on climate change around what that looks like in a kind of Muslim context. We saw kind of Black Christians in the UK are really concerned and are taking taking action in their own way. So we need to embrace really diverse narratives, message carriers, and and kind of get and amplify those.
And that is also particularly important when we think about the impact that we want all of this to have, because we've been really good at talking to people that think like ourselves, but in order to break from the echo chamber and really bring in more people into understanding the impact of climate change, we need to also partner up with people that come from diverse backgrounds, and that is also key to really be prepared to fight in the context of COP26 next year. It's bringing us as many allies as we can possibly find along the way.
The second one was all about lightening up. So, to be honest with you, a lot when if you want to feel depressed, I would put hashtag climate change into the search bar of Instagram, because there is just not enough, and you'll get a lot of really worthy, really serious content out there. And actually, what we need, the other side are really funny. Climate denial, lots of climate denial memes really make you giggle. They're really dark. They're the kind of stuff that which flies on social media platforms. So we felt that we really needed to inject some humor, some fun, and a lighter touch into some of the content out there. A big one was around learning from the bad guys. So a big part of this brief was about understanding what tactics climate deniers are using. And it's everything you can possibly think of. It is testing and learning about messaging on Facebook right now, trying to create culture wars where none yet exist. It's about posting stuff that's so outrageous that it moves the conversational window over. It's about doing all this stuff. So what we've got to do, I think, is learn and unfortunately, I think there was a great quote around from Obama that you had flow around. If they go low, we go high. We have to go a bit low here in order to fight back. So one of our big recommendations was around breaking down barriers and actually going and taking on climate denial where you find it, actually creating more adversarial content that says no, that takes on some of the denial narratives, and about learning from the tricks that the bad guys do to make our communications and our responses much more on point.
Yes, and there was also a lot of recommendations in terms of adopting new distribution tactics for the online environment, because there is a lot of tradition from PR and comms in the climate movement, but actually it's really important that we start using this sophisticated audience segmentation possibilities that social media platforms bring. So that is also something that we're working, with the climate sector in embracing and adopting, really making a smart use of technology and digital media, as the bad guys are doing.
So this is the example that I talked to you earlier on around breaking out with paid media. So this is all about getting out of the echo chambers and stopping talking to just preaching to the choir, and going and kind of using advertising essentially to go and find people and to talk to them, but also using advertising to get into the spaces with people we don't agree with, or people who are questioning, and and kind of bringing them, directing them to information, to content, to things. This is an example. This is also an example of using paid media to show solidarity with a community that were being trolled, and a really clever one at that. Defund the dickheads. We mentioned before that this information is essentially kind of funded by advertising. You can go on climate denial YouTube channels and see pre-roll adverts. We can go to the worst disinformation sites, and they are monetized by adverts. So that's something that we do at the Conscious Advertising Network, and that there's kind of quite a lot of campaign organizations out there that do, is point out when advertising is appearing on in places that it shouldn't, and take that to the ad networks, but also take that to the brands whose advertising is appearing next to this stuff, and saying, are you super comfortable with that? Are you sure? To kind of start those conversations. Asking difficult questions. So again, this stuff is funded by advertising, and it absolutely cuts through social media like knife through butter. I think that I'm not sure if this is totally right, but there was a study done quite recently which suggested that misinformation cuts through social media platforms. I think it was 6 times quicker than the truth. So we are up against, and that is driven by all the great work that the Mozilla advocacy team have done on showing how this works with the recommendation algorithms. All this, these information environments are designed to kind of promote and kind of recommend content that's going to keep us on there. And unfortunately, misinformation does that. It hits all the buttons. It's salacious. It's terrifying, and people share it. People interact with it, and it gets recommended. So we are advocating that both advertisers and kind of consumers start to ask difficult questions of the platforms and ask them, what are your policies on climate denial and climate delay messaging? How can I make sure that my advertising isn't appearing next to it and therefore funding it? And what are you doing to your recommendation algorithms to make sure that this stuff doesn't reach a mass audience in the same way that you've done with the coronavirus kind of misinformation and fact checking? So yeah, we're advocating asking some difficult questions of these platforms to make sure that they know that it's a serious priority. And I just wanted to kind of reference this because I know that this is a huge topic, but as far as as far as we're concerned, there is freedom of speech, which is utterly of the utmost importance, and it's a right. Freedom of expression is enshrined within the UN Declaration of Human Rights. But freedom of reach does not equal freedom of reach. So I can say what I like, but I do not have an automatic right for that, for what I say to be amplified in these social media kind of environments. And I also don't have a right to get paid for saying what I say. So just wanted to reference that there. We're not talking about silencing people. We're just talking about making sure that that people get balanced information, and that people aren't getting paid for spreading this stuff in the way that they currently are. And the final thing that is all about working with your online environments. Like, they're ugly, we don't like them, we campaign against them, we want them to change, but we have to, as well as asking for them to change, like when we're constructing kind of campaigns or when we're creating tech to kind of to correct these things, we've got to work with them. And this is more of a message for a lot of our friends in the climate movement who still think that a press release is gonna sort these things out. I think it's a bit different at here. So that's our quick canter through 3 months of slogging it out on climate misinformation. Really, like this report is going to be available to download really, really soon. And yeah, who's got questions?
Yeah, thank you so much. That was super interesting. Just a reminder to everybody, we're taking questions in the speaker-series channel on Slack, or you can message me directly. My handle is John, just Jon. We don't have any questions as yet, but I quite liked the lol memes, if you will. Have there been any? Have you seen any progress in like shifting public conversation using memes?
I don't know if we've seen any changes specifically, but we have seen definitely an uptick in being used with very different purposes. So there are a few that are aimed at really triggering the climate activists and very succeeding at it. So there's a lot of people who are so offended or triggered or have such reactions that they end up sharing what is exactly designed to make them react like that. So there's that, and there's also a lot of anti-climate organizations that are using memes to just doing the adversarial narratives and kind of interfering and getting inside circles that they wouldn't be able to just play in. So they're getting very, very, very dirty with the memes because they travel so quickly. They're very powerful, actually, and you might not even realize with the humor, and you might be, just engaging in a completely different type of conversation. So yeah, it's one of the key areas that we're going to focus on for next year, probably.
I was just saying, like in the UK, like there's actually some really good memes and really great content coming out of the US. It's just, and you guys are always a little bit further ahead than us, but there's not enough stuff coming out of the UK and out of in the English language. And I think what we really kind of wanted to see and want to encourage is that we start kind of creating those UK narratives that are really fun, that are really accessible, that make things that actually kind of appeal to people here, because I think some of that actually increases the disconnect that some people feel between what's actually happening and what's possible.
Yeah, that's right. And one thing that I also stood out to me here was there are quite a lot of parallels between the information that we're seeing on climate change and what we're also seeing with the COVID and like vaccine kind of stuff, which I think is we're going to see a lot of in the months ahead, but also that we saw in the election in the US that just took place. Would you say that's kind of an accurate read of how things are in the misinformation space?
Yeah, 100%. So when we did this, we actually looked at COVID misinformation and used that then to and then looked at climate misinformation, because it's it's urgent right now, the kind of the COVID stuff, because it's such a live conversation. So we felt like what was happening there would probably start being replicated in the run up to COP26, to be honest with you. And all the frames, so when we talk about frames, we're talking about these kind of assumptions that get ingrained over time. And I think there's a lot of, certainly in the UK, there's certain kind of frame kind of dog whistles around, for example, immigration, or around, kind of, I don't know, immigration's a big one, but like, kind of, oh, you can't trust X. So those conspiracy theories and the frames that are being built up around COVID, you can't trust the government being a massive one. You can't trust doctors because they all disagree with each other. Those frames will then be used in the climate denial type thing, because it activates the same areas in our brain, the same concerns, the same prejudices. So I think that we're going to see. I think we're going to see a lot of that, and I think it is definitely worth looking at it in the round of misinformation as a whole.
That's great. Flo, did you have anything to add? We've got a question that I can jump to.
No, it's fine. Yeah, we've definitely seen the same tactics and mechanics being played out. It's like straight out of a playbook that everyone is using around COVID, the election and this as well. So a lot of different fronts to kind of battle and protect.
Sure, yeah. One of the questions that's come in, it's the commenters. This is a hard question to word, but is there evidence of conspiracy theories on like our side, I think, being the good guys? So, for example, with an encompassing narrative to explain climate change or anti-climate change actors' actions.
I mean, what we actually have seen more of, and I think the States is different here. So there's an amazing research report by an organization called Influence Map. If you're based in the States and you want to know more about the narratives there, that's a great one to look at. From a kind of more UK European perspective, the problem was more that on the climate side of things, people are boring people to death, and they are defaulting to science kind of based communications and talking to each other. It was less that they're getting creative around kind of creating conspiracy theories or using culture wars tactics. So actually the problem, and I think in the States, because I read somewhere that climate change is more politically polarized than abortion in the States. So we're not at that stage. We're at a stage where most people kind of think that most people think it's happening and are worried about it, but we're quite split on whether actually it's man-made or not. So it's a very different environment. And over here, the movement are really just boring people to death. I think the youth movements are doing something different, which is much more interesting, but you know, if you're 15 years old, you've got a lot less power than someone who's 45 years old. So we have to make sure that these kind of conversations are bringing everyone in.
We have, though, tried to think about what a good conspiracy theory could look like for the climate movement. I mean, if they're talking about lizards, maybe there is, I don't know, a good animal for us to kind of own. Yeah, we are having some fun thoughts about that, because yes, we need to be a little bit more edgy and more bold to be able to cut through, because we're not really winning this battle. So time to get adversarial, time to get creative.
I think we've got the ultimate, them and us narratives with, for those of you that don't know, the British press is owned by 5 billionaires, none of whom pay tax, because they've all got non-dom status. So if you want to get cynical about the information that we receive on this tiny island, it's you know, you can do that pretty quickly. So we have those ultimate kind of, and we have you know, kind of great kind of power dynamics in the country, which, you know, we don't think that continuing to divide people is a great idea. But what we do think is that kind of, I think, being a bit more feisty with when we do say, no, this is wrong, this is the reasons why, and getting creative with that is the right way. And I think it's obviously, we're not suggesting that we then start to suggest that you know, kind of particular people are lizard people, but we are going to, you know, but we have made a strong recommendation that we stop going, oh no, we can't possibly do that, no, we're too nice, and we get stuck in.
So I remember there's this book named called Made to Stick, and they introduce this concept of a sticky idea and some of those characteristics that like one of those ideas that spreads around on its own kind of has, and it feels like what we're trying to find is that sticky idea for climate good, and not climate evil. So yeah, that's very good. It doesn't look like we have any other questions in our chat, or one is being written at the moment, but just see what comes out of that. And then sticky idea for climate good. It's just a comment about that. Great. Well, I want to say thank you so much to both of you for your time. I understand this is the global premiere for this talk, and I really enjoyed it. So I hope everybody else did too. So thanks so much for joining us, and we'll see you at the next Environmental Speaker Series. Bye, everybody.